Hey, I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. As you can tell from the title, today we're going to talk about a sound dampening device that's been on the loose for a good while and has been talked about by quite a few folks. But before we get into our subject matter, as you all know by now, YouTube has been nothing but a colossal expense for me for over a decade. In addition to this, my little clone is starting to get into this as well, so let's talk about today's sponsor. If you're anything like me, you're constantly inundated with spam email and calls. All of us can press Y to relate to having a credit card compromised, and the current data indicates that 1/4 of all Americans are victims to some kind of online crime. I know that one of the biggest reasons for all this nonsense, honestly, is that big companies either can't or won't keep our data safe. Ticketmaster, for instance, who were recently hacked, had the data of over 560 million users put up for sale on the dark web, which is amazing. Full names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, credit card data, basically your entire life was sent to some dude on the spicy internet. Best case, this means we all get more spam. Worst, and more often the case, our identities get used fraudulently. So what is Ticketmaster doing about all this? Well, they said that they didn't think a hack would have a material impact on our business. So have a nice day. But they aren't the only ones either. All of these big corporations love collecting your data, but they do almost nothing to protect it. That's why I've started using today's sponsor, Aura. Aura provides all-in-one digital protection for everything that matters, in an app that's super easy to use. I get alerts when my data has been leaked to the dark web or is part of a data breach from yet another careless super corporation. I get fast fraud alerts if someone uses that data to access my credit card or bank accounts, and they delete information from data broker websites, which helps to reduce the spam even more. Look, I'm the kind of person that doesn't even like it when Nix knows exactly what I'm doing, so if that's all Aura did, it would be pretty cool. But Aura also includes transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus tools, a password manager so you can finally stop using the name of your childhood house cat as your passcode for everything, because who names their cat Cooper anyway, parental controls, and even identity theft insurance. You get all of this in one app at a price that's actually affordable. And the next time I get yet another email about yet another data breach, AT&T, I'm not going to worry, because Aura is always on and always working to keep me and my family safe. I happen to be about the family security thing. I kind of carry a gun every day. So if you don't want to leave your identity vulnerable to data breaches, you can go to aura.com/regularguy and try your first 2 weeks free. Personally, I say give it a try. It's a great tool that's reliable, and I appreciate them supporting what we do here. Again, go to aura.com/regularguy or just click on the link in the description below and try Aura for 2 weeks free. Also, it has come to my attention that a lot of you are not getting notifications of my videos. So, if you are already subscribed, you can hit the little bell icon for the notifications, set it to all, and you'll be notified anytime that I have something pop up, whether it's a short or a community post or a mainline video like this. For those of you that are not subscribed and all of that jazz, if and only if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give us a like, a subscribe, hit the bell, all of that stuff. But now let's go ahead and get on to the meat and potatoes of this video itself. So, the Surefire RC2. A lot of people have already said a lot about this individual suppressor, and frankly, there's a lot of people that are also doing their very best to try and keep you from buying this suppressor, and we're going to kind of get into that as we go. But let's go ahead and talk about what suppressors are actually for, because aside of what everyone hears as far as night vision, signature, and stuff like that, a lot of times people don't really think about the really important stuff revolving around suppressor use. As we go here, I'm going to sort of outline why exactly I think certain things are really important to suppressors, and that will more or less inform the rest of the criteria I'm kind of moving with here. First and foremost, if I mount a suppressor to just pick a rifle, right? The most important thing, frankly, that I need more than anything else is minimal POI shift. Now, a lot of people may just kind of open with, well, what do you mean? You know, shouldn't it be decibel reduction? Shouldn't it be signature? Shouldn't it be this and that and the other? Those things are in fact important. What I will say though is I have a tendency to use rifles with and without suppressors on them. Turns out there's a lot of reasons to use a rifle unsuppressed, even though you've built an entire rifle around being suppressed. Fact is, I would so much rather the flexibility in that system to where if I have to take the thing off, if I'm going to use it without a suppressor, or whatever, right? I would like it to be just not a huge memory game as to where exactly the thing is going to print at different distances if I have the thing off and then if I mount the thing back up. Typically speaking, whether or not I plan on mounting a suppressor to a rifle, I'm going to zero the thing unsuppressed. Generally speaking, also, if we're talking about like a 5.56 type rifle, I'm going to zero the thing at 50 yards and then go out and cure it at 200. What I'm also going to do is, regardless to what the purpose of that particular rifle is, I'm going to make sure that whatever the suppressor host is going to be has at minimum a medium profile or a government profile barrel on it. Reason for this is that if you have a pencil profile barrel, or even the ELW guys will immediately jump in the comment section and say, well, what about my enhanced lightweight? An issue comes up when you mount a suppressor that weighs about a pound, regardless to what purpose you have for it is going to shift quite a bit if you end up mounting a suppressor to a very thin profile barrel. It's just going to happen. And yes, guys that have enhanced lightweight barrels and will jump in the comments and be like, oh, why does it shift all that much? I'm going to tell you right now, I have watched a lot of students come through a lot of different classes, and every single time somebody has an enhanced lightweight barrel on a short gun that then mounts up a 6-inch long suppressor onto it has either really weird or traumatic POI shift. That said, part of this has to do with the suppressor itself and the muzzle device that it's being mounted to. I'm not really going to talk about direct thread cans because, frankly, there are reasons to have them, especially if, again, you never plan on taking the thing off. But at the same time, that doesn't encourage the same flexibility that I'm kind of going for here. So coming back to the RC2 and the Surefire muzzle devices, I will say that this mounting system is, quite frankly, one of the very best I have ever used. The taper on the muzzle devices themselves, as well as the can, allows the can to sit very deeply on the muzzle device. That's not really that big of a deal. A lot of muzzle devices already do that. But the part that allows consistent POI shift is very important in that the can indexes on the same spot every time and then ratchets down. What this does is that no matter what POI shift that you get from mounting a suppressor to that rifle, at the very least it's very consistent. In this specific case, what we have is just about every time I mount a can to a rifle that has a barrel length of 14.5 and in, and I never really go closer than 10.4 or 10.5, what we essentially have is a 1-inch to 1.5 inch drop at, for instance, 100 yards. So what this turns into, if I've already gotten a unsuppressed zero of 50 cured at 200, what I end up with suppressed is a 100 yard line zero. Now, I recognize that there are better individual zeros to go for than that specifically. However, again, we're talking about the flexibility here. Also, understanding the individual dope for those distances with those types of guns and that sort of thing makes it significantly easier for me to track what is going to happen at particular distances within that envelope as well as outside of that envelope. In other words, from 0 to 100 and then post 100. So if I know where the POI shifts are going to be, and if it's that consistent, it's pretty easy to say that this is a favorable matchup as far as muzzle devices and suppressors are concerned. And while we're talking about this, we're going to go ahead and mention, the possibilities of carbon lock and how to avoid that sort of thing, because everybody eventually gets to this portion of the discussion when we're talking about quick detach suppressors. So anytime that you use a suppressor in any real volume, you run the risk of carbon locking that suppressor to the muzzle device that it's attached to. There's also a lot of hilariously bad solutions for preventing carbon lock, including anti-seize, grease, things like that. And I'm going to tell you right now, based off of the experience that I have, glopping a bunch of stuff on your muzzle device that's going to then get caked in hot carbon is a really good way of fossilizing all of that and making that suppressor essentially try to weld itself to that rifle. And in the event of that level of stupid approaching your mind and allowing for that sort of thing to happen, at the very least, a quick detach collar being undone allows you to fire around and eject the thing. That said, a great way to avoid that is, frankly, just keep all the contact points as clean as possible. You don't need extra stuff. The maximum amount of oil that you would ever need is to pull away as much carbon as possible from those areas, but keep it dry, keep it clean, and the can will come off. With those things in mind, it's quite easy now to get the thing off regularly. And I will say that of the different suppressors and different suppressor mounting solutions that I've seen in the past, this is basically the easiest one to get on and off as far as all that's concerned. Now, I recognize that someone's going to jump into the comments and tell me that the matchup that they have is better. I gotcha. Everybody has their preferred. I personally prefer this type of setup, simply because it's easy and it doesn't require a whole lot to just sort of make sure that my stuff will come on and off when I need it to. The next very important thing that I'm just going to kind of loop into here is sound. Now, it's well known by this point that Surefire suppressors in general, including the RC2 or the RC3 or the RC, are not the lightest nor the quietest as far as decibel reduction of the lot. What I will say though, and this is more of a subjective thing, is a lot of times people don't really understand that the hardest part about responding to like a gunfight that you might be in is where is it coming from? And I say that because the tone that comes off of this is really, really difficult to tie down with just your ears. Like if you're in an open field, whatever is using this suppressor is hidden, and then shots start firing, it's really, really hard to identify exactly where it's coming from. In addition to this, what is significantly louder than all of this is the supersonic cracks arriving at your position. So the fact that the tone seems to be very, very low makes it very difficult to identify exactly where a shot is coming from, and it only gets worse as you back up. Now, again, there's a lot of people that'll jump in here and be all like, oh, well, the decibel reduction. Listen, again, the supersonic crack, the part that is actually not hearing safe for you, and the reason why you should wear hearing protection when you're using suppressors with supersonic ammunition in the first place, is so much louder than the little low-toned fut that comes from an RC2 that it makes a lower-tone suppressor that much harder to personally tie down. And frankly, that's the part that a lot of people just miss. In addition to this, we have very, very, very low signature. The kind of low signature where even if it's pitch dark at night, and even if it's the very first round coming out of the gun, compared to a lot of suppressors, a lot of well-known suppressors too that are out there, the first shot pop and continuous follow-ups after that are very, very difficult to see. Now, I don't know how many of you have been around a lot of different suppressors that are out there, but man, there are even some full-size ones out there that have no business calling themselves suppressors because you might as well have set the cardboard in front of you on fire. To where, yeah, according to you and your hearing protection, it sounds neat during the day, but once the sun goes down and the lights go out, it's suddenly very, very bright where you're at. Fun fact is that the extra part of this too, the ability for one to see this with night vision on or whatever, right? It's still significantly less than what comes off of a lot of different guns, except for thermal, because suppressors are hot. But even still, under night vision or digital night vision or whatever, the difference between this can and a lot of cans that are, in a lot of ways, very highly regarded and far more likely are significantly cheaper, is quite frankly very loud as far as signature reduction is concerned. On multiple occasions and multiple night vision classes that I've taught in the past, man, you can just really see the difference between the tiny little flashes coming out of guys that are using RC2s that are attached to short guns versus many other cans, especially the cheaper ones, is quite staggering in that, man, you can really see a lot of other stuff that's out there. And what has traditionally just been a thing and everyone sort of notices that's looked into an RC2 before, has seen before, is that the signature that comes off the front end of these guns is significantly lower than that of a lot of comparable products. Now, I don't really have to talk about the IR signature that comes off of this suppressor while you're under night vision and that sort of thing, because under a certain set of circumstances, every can will glow. Same time, I will mention that it does take quite a while for it to signature itself in the same way. In addition to this, we can talk about things like back pressure and how smoky things get in front of your face. And the cool part about this is that this is a traditional sealed can with a baffle stack in it that is just not all that smoky compared to a lot of stuff that's out there. In addition to that, compared to what I've seen from, for instance, older AAC cans, the back pressure is really not that bad, which lends itself to significant upside as far as keeping a traditional DIAR alive while you're trying to use it for as long as possible, especially for guys that have looked into a lot of flow-through can designs and either don't like their signature, don't like their tone, or have decided to go with an external piston type gun like something from LWRC, LMT, or a 416 action type gun. And yes, this also includes the MCX and all of its little variants. The guys that are able to take advantage of as much signature reduction and good tone while also keeping the rifle alive for as long as possible. That said, still, even the guys that are messing around with DI guns know more or less, especially those that have used them a lot, how long you've got before a traditional DI AR is going to start to give you problems. And yes, those of you that are running around with the adjustable carriers and gas blocks, you're still going to run into issues, especially through back pressure. I don't care if you got a flow-through can, you're still going to run into that stuff. I've seen it a billion times. But before I tangent, one of the reasons for, well, actually the reason for its great tone and overall performance and signature reduction and all this other stuff is the same reason that a lot of people just straight up complain about it. A lot of people say, well, it's not the quietest and it certainly isn't the lightest one out there because a Surefire RC2 is just over a pound. It's an ounce over a pound, in fact. They're also going to go ahead and try to proclaim that their can is simply better because it doesn't need all the baffle stacks in it and blah, blah, blah. Well, fact is that one of the reasons why that this is so expensive and one of the reasons why it has the performance that it has without destroying itself is because there are so many baffles that are in it compared to a lot of other cans that are out there. So if you want solid performance, as well as a can that can actually last over 80,000 rounds, you probably want to look in this thing's direction, especially if you plan on doing a lot of suppressed shooting. That said, I'm also going to go ahead and touch on something that people just don't in general. Not a lot of people really realize that sealed can or not, you do actually have to service the things, like you got to clean them, right? And the real fun fact on this is that if you don't, whether or not you have a traditional baffle stack or not, you're going to start running into tone issues, meaning you're going to notice a higher pitch out of your setup, or you could start running into signature reduction issues, meaning it'll start to flash a little bit more. In addition to this, if you just shoot cans and never look at them ever again, over time, and I recognize that I harp on weight and how much it's really not that big of an issue all the time. That said, if you start doing a lot of shooting, and I mean a lot of shooting, like you actually train versus talking like you do on Reddit, for some reason, madam, you will start to run into these performance issues, principally on tone, signature reduction, and you start to add weight to the suppressor itself. Now, the most egregious examples of this sort of thing involve people that I personally know, where the guy will have used his can for so many rounds that you put the thing on a scale, and I've seen up to 9 ounces heavier than it should be. Now, again, I know I harp on weight being not that big of a deal, and like a external piston rifle being 1 pound heavier is just something that really shouldn't bother you. But at the same time, if you're taking on 9 ounces of extra weight right on the nose for literally no reason, you probably should address that. As far as sealed cans go, this one's actually quite easy. Okay, you get yourself like a little shake cup, a little plastic bag so you can swish stuff around a little bit, and all you really do is you take traditional gun oil, like the Safariland CLP that's in every Walmart ever, you soak the thing in that for a few days, and once you've soaked that guy in there for a few days, you just bring it out, let it dry for a couple of days, mount it up, and then after that, the first 30 to 100 rounds are going to be a little more smoky than you're used to, but then suddenly everything sounds really good, your night vision signature is really good, and whether or not you notice it, it's going to be a little bit lighter too. Reason for just letting it soak in all the CLP and that sort of stuff is to help break things up. When you go to shoot it, it's going to eject extra particles and that sort of stuff. It's sort of the recommended procedure, and Surefire recommends roughly every 5,000 to 7,000 rounds, and I'm not really going to argue with them on that. For those of you who have never even heard of this procedure before and have never cleaned your sealed cans ever, you might want to multiply the number of days you soak and let dry by like 2. But there you go. As far as warranty work and that sort of stuff, if something does happen to break on your Surefire whatever, Surefire is traditionally very good with customers and customer service. And for something this expensive, I would assume that they would be pretty good at that. So at the end of the day, what do I really think about it? Well, it's stout, and you need to be prepared for that. The extra pound up front is going to take some people off guard. And here's the thing. You have yourself a 10, a 10-4, 10-5, 11-5, 12-5, whatever, right? Even if it's in the shorter configuration of something like 10-5 or 3 or whatever. The second you mount this thing up, well, first of all, a 6-inch can is basically what you should be looking for anyway. That's sort of the magic number for me. Pretty much anything below that's too much signature, and tiny cans on tiny guns is a really bad idea as far as what they're made for. But you do have to recognize that the second that you mount this up to, for instance, a 10-5, you now have a full-sized rifle. If you're not prepared for that, it's gonna come get you, and the nose weight is going to bother you some, because you're not prepared for it. If you recognize, okay, the barrel length on this is pretty short, but this is still a full-size gun, it's not going to bother you anywhere near as much. In addition to that, the performance that it gives you is frankly just great. It does exactly what it's supposed to all the time without complaint. It's basically never going to break. Servicing it is super easy, and if you screw up and get it carbon locked to the gun, it has an ejector seat. So honestly, if you want a can that does literally exactly what it was supposed to versus some dude that is finding excuses to hate it for no reason, honestly, I would press the trigger on this and get it moving, because they're frankly, at least in my mind and as far as the traditional sealed cans are concerned, because we can talk about flow-through cans later, best in class. Not just for the suppressor itself, but for the muzzle devices that it comes with too. Because frankly, there's just enough options to where somebody that wants something to go with it is gonna have exactly what they need. Up to and including a bird cage. I don't really know why you would want a bird cage to go with this when the Warden exists, but you could, so there you go. And yeah, I'm really biased because I've just seen them work over and over and over again. But over the years, I just start to turn my nose up at fashionable and trendy things until they're very well evaluated and compared next to stuff that just works over and over and over again. So, that's it. That's all. That's the review that I've got on it. I appreciate you guys for watching and supporting and all of that extra stuff. So if you want to come out and train with us, we have a class set in Pennsylvania this coming August. Mechanical pistol is sold out, but self-defense pistol on the 16th and 17th are good to go. This coming September in Eastman, Georgia, we also have a pistol set, September 20 through 22. It's both mechanical and self-defense. We also have a vehicle class, September 28 through 29. Our night vision stuff is sold out. And we also have a dedicated AK class back in Pennsylvania again, March 28 through 30 of 2025. If you want to support the channel, you can easily do that via Patreon with whatever it is that you want to contribute per month. And also, if you want to throw in $41 per month, you can get as much training with us as you like. I recognize that there are a lack of a wide range of classes currently, but as a lot of you have probably figured out, this has to do a lot with my military schedule. So before too terribly long, a whole new list of courses will be thrown onto the website as soon as I'm able. Those that use $41 a month as their ticket to as many classes as they want to will obviously get access to as many classes as they can stomach. The only classes that are not covered are logistically ridiculous classes like the vehicle class, for instance, or if you want to set up a private class for rather obvious reasons. Or if you don't want to sign up for a monthly thing, you could very easily just go ahead and throw a super thanks located on one of the tabs underneath this video window. So, with that said, guys, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy. Everybody gets theirs, Brian. Welcome back.